Hello, my name is Adam, and I review things, and I'm trying to be the world's most prolific reviewer. And today I'm going to talk about a film from 2006, a German film called The Lives of Others. It was directed by Florian Henkel van Snark, very German name, and it stars Ulrich Mulche, Martina Gedeck, Sebastian Koch, and Ulrich Tulkur. And the plot of the movie, it's set in East Germany right before the Glasnost period, so like 81, 82, something like that. And the thing to know about East Germany is it was a surveillance state. So basically, the government spied on people, and people spied on people for the government. And the only reason that they spied on those people is because the government would have something on them. I think there's some ridiculous statistic like 60% of people in the country, adults, were like spying on other people. And that's kind of how communism worked. So you'd have the state security system, Stasi, and they would find kind of like these hooks on people, and they would use them to find subversive people or whatever. So the story centers around this one Stasi operative who is very professional, very good at his job, and it starts with him interviewing a suspect, and then it turns out that this is just a university lecture, and his boss comes along and says, "Okay, we have a task for you. We'd like you to do surveillance on this guy." And the reason he has been asked to do surveillance on this guy, the reason his boss has asked him to do surveillance on this guy, is because his boss's boss actually is in love with the guy's girlfriend because the guy is a director. And so the really professional Stasi agent starts to supervise the investigation against this director, and the director is very pro East Germany. And that's the thing about the communist system is it's always a quest for ideological purity. And when the the government changes, then that definition of ideological purity also changes. And then people who were pure 10 years ago aren't pure because they don't fit the definition now. And the thing is, there are people who believe in the system. So this German director was one of the people who believed in the system, but all of his friends, some of his friends are like arrested, some of his friends are blacklisted. And so it goes on, the surveillance, and the Stasi agent doesn't really find anything. He finds some minor things like Western newspapers, or the guy listens to the Western German news because you could if you had a television. Because if you lived in Berlin, there was West Berlin as well. So, um, so that goes on, and the Stasi agent eventually realizes why he's doing this investigation, and he kind of intervenes in the investigation because what's happening is the director's girlfriend is having an affair with this minister of culture, and he kind of says like, you're a great actress, you are an artist, are you believing in yourself, are you being true to yourself? And when they have this conversation, the girl doesn't know that he is like a Stasi agent. So she kind of goes back to the director. And before that, they have an argument, the director and her. And basically, she's like, I'm sleeping with him for my career. So if I don't sleep with him, my career is over. And she's like, maybe you're not sleeping with him directly, but you are in bed with this system. So you want like all of this work and stuff. And if you don't do that, then you're not gonna have a job also. So they have this argument, and eventually, I don't know if it's because of what the Stasi agent says or just her own kind of beliefs, she uh, she goes and she decides that she's going to be with the director, and the the minister of culture, because this is the minister of culture, basically gets really angry and says, "You need to destroy this woman." So they find that she is taking some illegal drugs and they're going to ruin her career. So she's in the investigation. She's being interrogated and she's being interrogated by this Stasi officer. And basically, she tells him that because okay, go backing up a bit. I'm telling you the whole story, but it's so interesting actually. I think you can still watch it and find it interesting. So the even if I tell you all the plot, I think you can still find it interesting. So then before all of this happened, or maybe during, one of the director's friends commits suicide, and he writes this article about the fact that they didn't track suicides in East Germany, and how that is actually something like you can track, like the number of students who have A's, the number of cars that are built, the number of everything is tracked in East Germany, but this. So why is that the case? And so he writes this story, and it's published in the West. And to write the story, because this is also crazy, they had the Stasi had information on every typewriter German writers used to write their work and how they would write their work. So for him to write the work, somebody had to come from East. So he had the idea, and he mentioned it to a Western journalist who was visiting East Germany, and that journalist had to smuggle in a new typewriter for him, and he had to hide the typewriter. So he hides the typewriter, he writes everything, and it's in red ink. And they say later, when the person who does the typewriter analysis, he's like, it's hard to tell what kind of typewriter this is because he's using red ink, and that's just because the Western guy who gave him the typewriter couldn't find because if you don't know, typewriters had this ribbon, and it was black ink, and then to make corrections there was like a little red ink ribbon, so he could only find the red ink ribbon. So because it was red ink, he couldn't actually find out much more about this typewriter. So he has this typewriter hidden in his floor in his apartment. And it's also crazy because he lives in East Germany and he is like a prominent figure, but he can't believe that that people would actually listen in. And of course his whole apartment is bugged. And anyway, so the girlfriend, who is this famous actress, says that he's the one who wrote this article because she's trying to save herself, and they go in and they like don't find anything, and so they don't find anything, and I think that they interrogated her after that, but he didn't. The director didn't know that because she says yes, the typewriter is hidden under the floor. So she comes back into their apartment because they share an apartment together, and then so there was like he's like, oh, where were you? Where were you? The Stasi came and they just searched my apartment. That's crazy. That's crazy. And the Stasi come back. And they're like, oh, we didn't do a thorough job. We're going to do it again. And that's a crazy thing too. Like, so they leave the first time and they've cut through cushions they've broken stuff, and the guy leaves a card and he says, "We probably haven't broken anything. We haven't broken anything," and there's like debris everywhere. "But if you would like recompensation, please contact this agency." And then he looks around and he sees all the debris everywhere and he's like, "Yes, everything is in order." So that's crazy. But anyway, so the Stasi come and they're doing their second inspection, and the the girlfriend sees this and she's like, because she knows that they're gonna find the typewriter, so she runs out into the street, and she runs out in front of a car, like on purpose, big truck, and the truck hits her. And the guy, so in the meantime, like, he can't move because they're looking for this typewriter, and they open the space where the typewriter was, and there's no typewriter. And he runs downstairs, and so basically the KGB agent finds the lady, the KGB agent who was like surveilling all of this, finds the lady, and she's like, "Oh, I made such a huge mistake. He'll never forgive me." And he's like, "I moved the typewriter. Don't worry. Why did you do this?" And then the director comes, and the director is like, "Oh my God," because this is the love of his life, right? So that's so after this happens, the cultural minister puts pressure on the KGB. I keep on saying KGB as Stasi, but like they worked for the KGB. But anyway, different agency. The Stasi agent, he gets demoted basically, and he is part of the. So basically, the mail is censored. So he's in the mail room, steaming letters open to read the letters to see if there's anything that shouldn't be said in the letters. Uh, and that lasts for like 10 years or something. And then they get a call where one of the guys listening on the radio to the fact that there's this announcement that the Berlin Wall has opened. So basically what happened, and that's also an interesting story, is the communism was collapsing all around, and the East German government was kind of like slow to decide what to do. And some minister of security or something said basically like he made a mistake and he announced that the wall would be open on this certain time. And then almost everybody in the country went to the wall at that time. And then they had a choice of like basically shooting everybody at the wall or just accepting the mistake that the guy did. And they accepted the mistake. And that was the end of the Berlin Wall. Yeah, then, so back to the movie, the Stasi ends, and what happened was you could actually go, and probably still can if you live in East Germany or you live in one of these post-Soviet countries, you can go and you can ask the security agent for your file. And so the director was just curious one day, so he goes into this agency and he's like, "Can I see my file? There's probably nothing." Well, actually, he meets the Minister of Culture, who's not the Minister of Culture anymore, and he says, "Yeah, why didn't you ever put me under surveillance?" And the guy's like, "Are you joking? We had like so much surveillance on you." So he goes back to his apartment, and the minister's like, look in your light sockets or look in your electric socket. So he he pulls everything out, and there's little microphones, and he pulls the wires, and he sees his entire apartment is bugged. So yeah, that's a bit of a shock. So after that, he goes to the security agent, and he asks agency, and he asks for his files, and he's expecting like something like this, but actually the guy pulls in this like huge cart. And before, there the girlfriend bought the director some sheet music, and the sheet music was called Sonata for a Good Man or something like that in German. So that's important later. So anyway, he's looking through his files and he gets to this part where there is this investigation that the movie is about, which was called Operation Laszlo, and he's reading like things that happened, and the part where he was writing this story for uh, the Western or German government. Not like he was writing it to be published in West Germany. So he told his girlfriend that he was writing a play for the 50th anniversary of the German Democratic Republic. So that is actually what's in the file. And clearly, the guy doing the surveillance would know that he wasn't actually doing that because they were talking openly in his apartment about writing this story. So he starts to realize, like, wait a minute, why did the guy do that? I don't understand. And then he looks, and then there's like days and times where it's just the KGB agent's number, and then nothing, 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 nothing. And then so later, obviously they found out what the Stasi agent was doing because they demoted him. But it's interesting that they kept it all in the file. They didn't change anything. It was just like day, nothing, day, nothing, day, nothing. So he goes to the archivist and he says, "Oh, can you tell me who this Stasi agent was?" And they have like a list of all of the Stasi agents because they were like super well organized. And he has his picture and he gets his address, and so he goes and he's in Berlin, and he finds the guy, and the guy is basically has a job delivering mail or something. Maybe not even mail, like commercial flyers kind of job. So he doesn't talk to him. But then the last scene of the movie is him, the Stasi guy, going into a bookstore because he sees a picture of the director, and it's like new book by director blah blah blah, new novel, uh, Sonata for a Good Man. And so he goes in, and because he's curious, right? Because he had this important investigation of this guy. He goes in and he opens the book, and he sees the dedication, and it says for, and then it's not the guy's name, it's his KGB code name. But and it's like not KGB Stasi code name, but it's like a XY blah blah blah, exactly what it was. And of course, he would know what the code is. So he's like, wow, wow. like, shocked that the director would actually remember him and know about it. And so the last scene is basically like the cashier is saying, "Would you like to wrap it as a present?" And he says, "No, it's for me." And I'm kind of tearing up about that right now, that last line, because, you know, there is a question of motivation. Like, why did he do that? Because he was a big believer in socialism. He was a believer in stopping people from escaping. Like, why did he do that? And I think the ultimate answer is it's for him because he wanted to be a good man. He wanted to do one good thing connected to his life. And, you know, even the worst people can choose the moral action in the end. And yeah, I think that the movie really, it's not one of those movies where you watch and you're like, wow, this is such an intense movie. But it makes you think about it. And I was thinking about it all day after I watched it. So yeah, it's a good movie. So it's good because it makes you think like, when would you, when would you be brave? When would you decide to make the moral choice, even if your profession, your safety, relied on you making the immoral choice? So that's always a big moral question, an important moral question. But I think also um, it really shows what life in that system was like. And I never lived in this system, but I traveled to post Soviet countries shortly after communism ended. And it was like a completely different time, but you still saw all of the effects of it. And even in my apartment here, this apartment was built during communist times, and the the table and the couch come from that. I mean, the little thing behind me where the pictures are, that's more like IKEA and stuff, but like it has like the doors that were mass produced. So this so each of those post-Soviet countries has like a certain aesthetic, which it's not, I mean, because it's hard to say what I mean, but it's the movie presents it in a really good way, because the aesthetic is something that people just existed in, and they probably weren't aware that they were existing in this aesthetic because they didn't have any comparison. And now people are sometimes nostalgic for that design choice because it wasn't connected to necessarily capitalism. So the design of like socialist architecture would be focused more on what it actually looked like, or, maybe it looked horrible, or whatever. Yeah, I'm rambling a bit, but it did make an impression on me, and I would recommend you watch the movie. And the interesting thing too is from 2006, so that was basically like 16 years before or after the end of the communist system in Eastern and Central Europe. So I think that 16 years is not a long time. So those actors who are middle aged in this film would completely remember growing up in the system. And I think that they had made, so Germans had made a few comedies about East Germany before this, like Goodbye Lenin was one of them, about a woman who had a coma, or man, I forgot what the gender was, but anyway, the person woke up after the end of communism and they had to kind of adapt to the new reality. But, I think it's easier to deal with something in a comedy sense rather than dealing with something in a drama sense, because the nerves are still very, very raw. Um, yeah, and I can't think, maybe I just don't know, but I live in Poland and I can't think of any similar Polish films. And I think it will take a longer time for Polish directors to tell a story like this. But maybe I'm wrong. If I could be wrong completely. So if you have a film that you know that's a Polish film that's like the lives of others, let us know. We'd love to check it out. I watch a lot of stuff, so I can watch a few Polish films as well. All right. So, oh yeah, to finish though, for real this time, my goal is to have 100 subscribers by Christmas. I have 90 as of the time of this recording. Also, if you want to support me and what I'm doing in a fun way, I have a Patreon. I'll put the link in the description. Basically, you can be a sort of fake lord, baron, baroness, whatever, according to how much you spend in the Patreon. And if anybody ever signs up to the Patreon, we'll then decide where we'll put 50% of the money, because I'd like to put 50% of the money to some kind of charity. All right, thank you. Bye bye.